Okay, let's unpack this. You know how places that thrive, they constantly have to reinvent themselves.
Right, like a city that starts small and just keeps growing, keeps changing.
Exactly. And Singapore often gets talked about like that. This whole journey, mudflat to metropolis and its education system, well, that's always been sort of fundamental to the whole thing, always adapting.
Yeah, that ability to pivot, to change based on what's happening, it feels like it's really baked into the national mindset.
Absolutely. So what we're diving into today is really that next phase. Singapore's new education minister, Desmond Lee, he's been laying out his vision lately, some concrete steps for what's coming. We got a bunch of sources here, reports, bits from speeches he gave around June 5th, 2025. One was at the Teachers Conference and Excel Fest, TCEF, and another at the pre-university seminar.
And these sources, they really give us a good look at the strategic thinking behind Singapore's education plans right now.
They really do. So our mission really is to dig into this stuff, pull out the key takeaways, and figure out, how Singapore is trying to get its students and its teachers ready for a future that, well, everyone agrees is changing dramatically.
Yeah, what does it actually mean for how you, listening, might think about learning or skills or even what success looks like?
Right. It's about understanding the why behind the changes and then how they plan to actually do it, from the big picture down to the classroom level.
Exactly, connecting those dots.
Okay, so let's jump in. First big question the sources tackle is, why make these changes now? What's the context Minister Lee laid out that makes this feel so, urgent?
What's really interesting here is how he directly links these huge global forces to what needs to happen in education. He talks about seismic shifts.
Seismic shifts, okay.
Yeah, like a fragmenting global order.
Yeah.
Where peace isn't something you can just assume anymore. And a fragile economic situation, more protectionism.
He actually mentioned global conflict, didn't he? Making that point that peace can't be taken for granted. That feels like a heavy point for an education speech.
It really does. It grounds that need for resilience.
Yeah.
Adaptability. And then you add technology on top of that.
Right, AI. Transforming everything. Work, life, learning itself.
But also the whole information environment. Social media, the spread of misinformation, fake news, all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's disruptive too.
So you've got conflict, economic worries, and then this confusing, fast-changing digital world.
Precisely. And he also mentioned societal tensions happening in many countries. Plus, the big one, climate change. A threat to lives, homes, the future.
Wow. Okay. That paints a pretty clear, if maybe a bit daunting picture of the world students are heading into.
It does. And the conclusion drawn in the sources is, well, the way people live and work has to change. Growth areas will shift, jobs will change, the skills you need, they'll evolve really fast.
So Singapore needs to stay nimble, agile, adaptable.
That's the core message. For Singapore to thrive, its education system needs to produce people who are nimble, agile, adaptable. It's not just about the economy, it's about navigating this really complex future.
Makes total sense. If the world demands adaptation, education needs to focus on building that adaptability. Which leads us nicely to the next big theme, redefining student success. The speeches seem to push beyond just grades and exams.
Yeah, and this raises a really fundamental question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How do you prepare students for a future you can't fully predict?
Right.
And the sources are clear. It's more than just the basics, literacy, numeracy, subject knowledge. Those are still vital, of course.
Yeah.
But it's about building these new competencies.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. It feels like a shift in what they're actually aiming for as an outcome. It's like teaching students to discern critically, think creatively.
Yes, moving past just taking in information to actually evaluating it, generating new ideas. And there's a big emphasis on communication collaboration, specifically across different cultures and perspectives.
Which ties back to that fragmenting global order you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. And they also need to be able to, connect ideas, adapt what they know, and apply it to real-world problems. That's a very practical skill.
Super practical for a changing job market.
But there's another layer the minister really stressed, kind of an anchor in all this change.
Yeah.
A strong set of values. A moral compass.
That seems absolutely crucial. The example given was AI, right? Intelligence lets you push boundaries.
But it's your moral judgment that tells you where you should stop.
Yeah.
It shows that just being technically good isn't enough. There's this ethical piece that becomes even more important as tech gets more powerful and society gets more complex.
So the sources suggest a move away from maybe focusing too much on just producing efficient workers?
Which has been a criticism sometimes leveled at systems.
Right. towards nurturing, what was the phrase, values-driven pioneers, innovators, problem solvers, bridge builders, connectors, and contributors.
Yeah, for the good of the community, the nation, the region, even the world. It's a much bigger goal.
Much more ambitious than just, say, economic output. It sounds like cultivating active, ethical citizens. And you see little hints of this in the examples from the conference, right? Things like cooking chemistry, nature journaling.
They might seem like small activities, but they point towards more creativity, more hands-on experimentation, learning things in context, not just from a book.
Yeah, integrating subjects, getting students doing things, asking questions, fostering curiosity.
Exactly. Application, not just memorization.
Okay, so if the goal for students is being rethought, how does that affect the teachers, the people guiding them? The sources talk about a specific change to teacher training, the PGDE program.
Yes, a pretty significant revamp of the Postgraduate Diploma in Education. That's the main route for graduates going into teaching in Singapore.
And the changes are quite concrete. It's going from 16 months down to 1 year.
That duration change is the headline, maybe, but the sources emphasize it's really about a shift in the approach, a much stronger focus on mixing theory with practice right away.
So less time just listening to lectures, more time actually in classrooms, trying things out.
That seems to be the idea. Moving away from maybe front-loading all the theory, towards being more agile, creative, responsive, grounded in what classrooms are actually like today, learning by doing.
And there's more flexibility in the program too.
That's right. Core stuff, everyone does, but then elective parts too. So teachers can tailor some of their learning based on their own needs or interests, or maybe the kind of school they're going to. Gives them a bit more ownership.
Mr. Lee had that quote, didn't he? "We learn by doing, and we will walk alongside our new teachers as you hone your craft."
Yeah, that quote suggests real mentorship, support during that crucial first year. And if you link this back to that need for agility, this PGDE change isn't just, changing the timetable. It feels like a deeper shift in how they think about training teachers, prioritizing practical skills for a complex world.
And the sources also mentioned this revamp, especially being shorter and more practical, might help attract different kinds of people into teaching, like mid-career professionals.
Definitely. It opens the door wider, as they put it, bringing in people with industry experience, different life lessons, different ways of seeing the world. That's seen as a real positive.
Makes sense. It could enrich the whole teaching profession, bring more real-world relevance into schools.
Exactly. If you want students ready for the real world, having teachers who've navigated different parts of it seems pretty valuable.
Okay, so that's attracting new talent. But what about the teachers already in the system? The sources talked a lot about supporting them too, right?
Oh, absolutely. They're called the quiet engine, the influencers of every generation. Huge recognition of their role. And there are 3 main priorities mentioned for supporting them.
First one is professional development, basically, keeping skills up to date.
Right. Opportunities to learn about new subject stuff, pedagogy, ed tech, character development, social emotional skills, through courses, mentoring, learning communities.
Essential because the job keeps changing.
Totally. Second is what we just talked about, attracting diverse talent. Really pushing to bring in people with the right values and different experiences, including those mid-career folks.
And the third?
Strengthening partnerships. With parents, they mentioned refreshed guidelines for school-home links, but also with alumni, industry partners, community groups, building that whole ecosystem around the school.
Right, making it less isolated. And there were specific examples of support, weren't there? Like that TWA Plus program, Teacher Work Attachment Plus.
Yes, that allows teachers to spend time outside the classroom, gain fresh perspectives.
Like the teacher, Ms. Wong Kai Ning, who went to AMD Singapore.
Exactly. She learned about semiconductor tech for her science class, sure, but she also saw firsthand what qualities that industry needs, like adaptability, being self-directed.
And she can bring that insight back to her students. That's powerful.
It really is. Practical insights that go way beyond just the textbook. The sources also mentioned efforts to help with workload.
Always a big topic.
Yeah, like piloting better ways to buy things for schools and getting rid of manual tracking of student absences through the Parents Gateway by the end of 2025.
Small things maybe, but they add up. Frees up teacher time.
Crucial time. And they're encouraging teacher-led learning too. Professional learning communities, PLCs, where teachers share what works.
And teachers presenting at that conference, TCEF, including from special education schools for the first time.
Yeah, fostering that culture of sharing, learning from each other, And those industry partnerships, again, like Miss Cindy Chang from MSD Singapore, going back to her old primary school to help with learning journeys and career talks.
Wow, so it really sounds like a comprehensive approach. Skills, diversity, workload, peer learning, external connections, and recognizing the whole school team, too. Allied educators, SEN officers.
That's right. It paints a picture of teachers not just being told what to do, but being supported as active leaders of the change.
Okay, that's the teacher side. Now let's flip to the students again. Minister Lee spoke directly to them at that pre-university seminar. What was the message there?
Well, it directly reinforced that idea that learning is not a race. And importantly, there are no fixed pathways to success.
That must be reassuring for students facing all this uncertainty we've talked about. Gives them permission to explore, maybe?
Exactly. Pushes back against that pressure cooker feeling, perhaps. And his advice for navigating the world, AI, trade issues, all of it was quite vivid. Less about specific job skills, more about mindset.
How so?
He talked about going back to fundamentals, yes, but also using your 5 senses as a map and your heart as a moral compass.
Let your heartbeat guide you. That's quite a line.
It really is a powerful metaphor, right? Blend observation with intuition, with your values.
And what else?
He encouraged them to connect with others, look out for the vulnerable, that empathy piece again. See the world with fresh eyes, stay curious, ask questions.
Sounds like good life advice, honestly.
Totally. And take action, be brave, try things, don't be afraid to fail, listen to others. It's a very holistic picture.
And he ended with, smell the roses and enjoy the journey.
Yeah, a reminder about balance, about the human experience within all this striving and learning.
And the sources suggested this message was actually landing through student projects and comments.
Definitely. Examples of projects tackling real issues, inclusivity, transport accessibility, healthcare tools, and they highlighted specific student voices.
Like who?
There was Lu Yan Han from National Junior College. He directly connected the minister's point about inclusivity to his group's project on jobs for youth with mild intellectual disabilities. He said his learning journeys really firmed up his passion.
So he felt that values-driven message.
Yeah, and his group's goal, make an inclusive society where we pull everyone up together. Pretty direct reflection.
Wow.
And another student, Cheng Yak Yang from Raffles Institution, he was really struck by that 5 senses and heart idea. Said he hopes to take that into policy making someday.
Interesting connection.
He said, I felt connected with what he said about leading with direction, with the heart. Policy must be driven by passion. But he also learned about feasibility and how listening to a teammate's experience with eczema shaped their healthcare project.
Ah, so the collaboration piece was real for him too.
Yeah, and he made the point that this shows why having equal representation is important, because we need these people to shape our policies.
So these student reactions suggest the core messages, values, real-world problems, diverse perspectives. They're not just abstract ideas. Students are actually engaging with them.
It seems so. They're internalizing them, applying them in their own work and how they think about the future.
Okay, so pulling all these threads together, the global context, the new definition of student success, the changes to teacher training, the support for teachers, the student perspectives. What's the big picture takeaway here?
Well, it seems like there's a very clear recognition of these unprecedented global challenges. And they're driving this need for a fundamental shift in education.
Right.
The response involves, first, that proposed PGDE revamp, making teacher training more practical, agile, flexible, and aiming to bring in more diverse talent. That goes hand in hand with rethinking student success itself, moving beyond just academics to focus on critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, adaptability, and crucially, that values-driven moral compass.
And underpinning all of that is this strong focus on supporting the teachers, the engine, right? Through ongoing development, trying to attract diverse people, building partnerships.
Exactly. And finally, the message to students themselves is about navigating this uncertain future, not with fear, but with courage, curiosity, empathy, guided by their own heartbeat.
And the minister linked this back to Singapore's history, not as a break from the past, but building on it.
Yeah, saying it's part of that historical DNA and mindset, applying imagination, resolve to challenges, continuing that mud flat to metropolis journey, just in new context.
So it frames this whole thing as evolution, not revolution, the latest adaptation. It sounds like these changes, starting with things like the PGDE revamp, are really part of a bigger reimagining of teaching and learning for the future, drawing a new map because the old roads are kind of disappearing.
I think that's a good way to put it. It's about equipping the next generation, not just with job skills, but with the mindset, the values, the adaptability to navigate and contribute positively to a world that's defined by rapid change and uncertainty.
That's a powerful goal. And, given everything we've heard, the world changing so fast, no fixed paths, this really raises an important question for you listening, doesn't it? How do you define what's most essential? What skills, what values do you need to navigate your own future journey?
Yeah. What do your own five senses and heart tell you about the path ahead? Food for thought.
Definitely something to mull over as we all try to figure out this evolving landscape.